We're back. Welcome back and thanks for joining. Please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate all those of you who have subscribed to my channel. And I really like comments that people make. I like talking about this stuff. You know, I'm that meme where the kidnappers throw you back through the window, returning you because you've been talking to them about axles and lift kits for the last 8 hours and driving them crazy. But that's just me. So anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. And please like, share, and subscribe. Today is 8/1 Engine Day. So the goal today, or this video, it's been a lot longer than a day coming. The goal of this video is removing all the exterior pieces to this engine. I'm not going to rebuild this engine. It's a perfectly good running engine. No reason to do that unless I'm going to build a hot rod at this point, and that may come at a later date, but for right now I want to get it in and get it running. However, I am going to take all the what I call tin off, which is valve covers, timing covers, oil pans, things like that. Clean everything up real good, repaint stuff, reseal things, more importantly, one of which is a rear main seal. And I wanted to show you this custom tool for doing a rear main in an 8/1. It's a piece of PVC I got at the hardware store. Perfect size. I did just have to chamfer this inside edge. Worked perfect. I'm going to talk a little more about the rear mains on these in a little bit. For now, let's get started. So as I'm taking stuff apart, I put things like these towels in the holes, wipe stuff down. I'll use a vacuum cleaner to help suck stuff up. I try to be very, very meticulous and clean when I'm doing these cleanings. I don't want to cause damage, but top end, bottom end, this engine's pretty clean. First thing I did do is put a new timing chain in it. Once I get all the tin yanked off of it and get all that cleaned up, I'd haul all that accessory stuff down to the car wash and just spray it with the power wash down there. The engine block and heads I clean up really good in my own shop. I prep it and then paint it with engine enamel, and I do like the aluminum and black contrasting. I put new front main in, new timing chain in, new intake gaskets on, new oil pan gaskets, and really important, the rear main seal. On the rear mains on these engines, the outer part of the rear main seals into the perfect circle in the block. The inside of this seals perfect to the crankshaft. It's not like the old school seals where you put some lube on and the seal actually rides on the crankshaft and creates a groove. That inner part of the seal on these it just locks right onto that crankshaft, and the outer part locks onto the block, and then it turns inside of itself. So the seal is its own wear item. That's why you put them in dry, but wanted to give you a little heads up on that because the first couple LS style engines I put together, I lubed them and they leaked for like 2,000 miles, and then they sealed up once it burned in. So put these in dry. The tool works really well, by the way. Just hammer it in. It's good. Next. Continuing on, I went ahead and rebuilt everything I could as far as accessory drives, replaced idler pulleys, new gaskets. I went through the throttle body and then pre-mounted my coils and wires, make sure they all fit correctly. Next up is transmission. Another rarity when I buy a transmission is it actually works. This one, I cleaned it up, did enough disassembly to inspect every synchro and gear. This thing is in really, really nice shape. It's one of the few I've looked at that I didn't have to rebuild it before I put it back in. The only thing I found wrong in the entire transmission is the nut that holds fifth gear was a little loose. I made a couple discoveries doing this conversion, and you know, sticking an NV4500 on the backside of an 8/1 is no mystery. Been done a whole bunch of times by a lot more people than me. But a couple discoveries I made. First of all, I used a big tooth count flywheel, and an easy way to look it up was for a 572 crate engine. So part number is there for you. Second thing, if you've ever really messed with these NV4500s very much, you know that the input shaft on these goes out quite a bit. And I think part of that reason is the nose of the input shaft rides on a pilot, and then it starts getting some play and deflection. And when you're putting that behind a big block and a heavy load, that could create some problems. So with these 8.1s, the early pilot bushing does not fit. What does fit really well is an LS pilot bearing. However, the LS pilot bearing is a lot thinner. It's only about a 1/2 inch wide. And so you can set that in and it works just fine. But I've been still hearing that people are having problems with the nose input shaft going out on these NV4500s. I think it's because there's not enough oomph in that nose bearing to really hold that input shaft straight without deflection under load. So I came up with this little idea, and we'll see how it works long term, but short term it works really, really good. I used 2 LS pilot bearings. I put one in to where it is flush with the nose of the input shaft, and then I seated a second bearing right behind it in the crankshaft. I have got that wide a support on the nose of the input shaft on this NV4500. It's smooth, it turns, no issues. So there's my give her a shot. I think it's going to work really well, and I have a strong feeling I won't have to replace an input shaft nearly as often as you do when you have a pilot bushing up there. So you can see the part number for that flywheel right down there. I don't think it really matters that it was for a 572. I was just looking for a zero balance flywheel, since the late model 454s are externally balanced and the 8.1 is not. So that was kind of what led me down that rabbit hole. As far as the clutch goes, it's for a 97 Chevy pickup. Same thing with the throwout bearing. It all fit like it was made for it. So I really don't have any worries at this point. You know, maybe later I'll find out I was wrong about something, but for now I'm going to go with it. Again, clean and paint everything I can, quasi frame off. You can see that big dent in the firewall. That was from the Chevy 350 valve cover. I'll probably need that dent anyway, and you can't see it once it's installed. Also, you can see I punched the holes out for the heater boxes. Here you can see on the frame the first cut I made for my frame horn or engine perches. It's just a piece of rectangle tube that's been cut. The passenger side, no big deal. Driver's side, it fit better if I flipped the tabs over, and then I did notch it just to give me a little better clearance for the steering shaft coming down. Well, I got the engine perches all built, let them cool down a little bit, and I can install them, weld them to the frame. I use this saddle area here to go over the frame. That way it disperses a lot of the load. You can see I ran a piece of electrical tape from the steering box up to the stub shaft there. That way I can make sure I keep the motor mounts out of the way. At this point, I spent a lot of time lining everything up, using some blocks of wood, chalking everything exactly where I need it to go, and I double, triple, and quadruple check everything before I try to burn any piece of these engine perches in. So to line it up, I actually used the transmission shift hole. I think that gave me a better depiction of what's going to work and what isn't going to work. Everything all lined up. Now on to the actual engine mounts. I had an old big block engine mount laying around the shop that I used the base of it as a template. Once I had it all cut out, I made sure to mark the holes exactly the same before I drilled them. Once I got everything drilled, I mounted them onto the engine block, and then I started figuring out the size of square tube I need to get to the bushing. And remember, both sides are different on this particular setup. 1/4" plate, heavy wall, 1.5" square tube with a 250 wall DOM tube I had laying around the shop. I don't think I'm going to have an issue with this, and it'll take a full-size bushing with a 9/16 hole in it. I think it'll hold the weight and the torque. I like the bench welding much better than I do welding on stuff upside down over my head. Way easier. Wash, rinse, and repeat for the other side with one exception. I have to make that square tube a lot longer because I made the perch go down instead of up to clear the steering. So here's what that one looks like. And of course I have to paint everything. Gotta make it pretty. Once I had everything lined up exactly where I wanted it, I tacked it all in and then double checked it again, made sure it was still right, and then I burned it in for real. This is now a permanently installed engine mount for an 8.1. I wanted to show, I actually made a shim for the driver's side engine mount. There's a slight tweak in the frame. This side sits a little bit higher than this side by just a skosh. So when I lined everything up and then welded it in, compensating for the frame, I just didn't compensate enough. So once I have the axles in, if that changes, I can either take out that shim or leave it. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to leave it though. Now that the engine's installed, I can reinstall the steering shaft now that I don't have to worry about it being in the way. And here's how the driver's side engine mount came out, and here's how the passenger engine mount came out. Thumbs up in my book. Next thing I did want to make sure I could get fit in here was the heater box for a heater core. It's just out of a full-size Jeep, and I will tell you what, it's tight. It's actually tight enough that while I'm deciding what I'm going to do to keep that heat from the exhaust off of it, I went ahead and installed all the new spark plugs and all the plug wires, all that stuff like I had sitting on the engine stand. I also made sure I had good clearance for things like hydro assist hoses and room for stuff to fit. But now I'm going to have to build a heat shield for that heater box and those plug wires for number 6 and number 8. You can see from below it's just as tight as it is up top, so got me a piece of cardboard, made myself a little bit of a template. Then I didn't have any tin, so I used the Tahoe I had going to the crusher to donate some tin for this little project. And then it was cut, sand, and drill, and now I can install it. I find it really interesting doing some of these conversions that little things like building a heat shield can take so much of your time. You know, it's worth it because everything will work right, but still, what a pain in the butt. Just to keep some heat away from a piece of fiberglass. That's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And keep throwing the comments in. I really enjoy yakking with those of you who want to yak about this stuff. Today's video is kind of long because a bunch of us did the post-Easter Jeep Safari Trail, Rusty Nail with part of Golden Spike and Gold Bar Rim on it. We had a pretty good piece of carnage involved, and we had a lot of fun though. So enjoy the video. Sorry it's a little longer, and see you next time. Have a large crew assembling today for Rusty Nail. I think a lot of people like Rusty Nail because it's the shortcut to get to Golden Spike, Gold Bar Rim, and there's a lot of little side obstacles and things up there. So we are off. Greenberg Rock. You have to drive your tires on his feet for good luck. Power. should work. Your rear tires are, your right rear is perfect. Just like that. Let's rock a hard spot. There it is. just not how a water car is supposed to look. I guess you could say custom clearance, but not in a good way. Big advocate. If you're doing a trailer repair, tire can save your life. Put it under the jeeps or the falls on you and kill you. Go driver. It'll go, but you have to commit.